one line under the video. I deserve to keep what's mine. So I'll know you're here. So you can remind yourself that you no longer need to give more just to prove you're enough. Because you, just as you are already are. At the family reunion, in front of 52 people, my mother raised her glass, pointed straight at my sister, and declared, "This is the daughter who truly knows how to love her parents. That other one? She's never done anything worthwhile." I stood there, frozen. That woman, the one who had taken thousands of dollars I sent over the past 9 years, whose mortgage I covered to keep them from losing their house, whose hospital bills, utility payments, and tuition fees I quietly paid, was now wiping it all away, as if I never existed. I didn't say a word. I didn't shout. I didn't expose her in front of everyone. I just pressed my lips together, forced a smile so cold it burned, and silently walked away from the gathering, the very place where the last shred of love I had left for them was killed. And the next morning? 38 missed calls. From people who had just realized the wallet they were used to reaching into had been locked. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever sacrificed everything only to be met with silence, if you've ever asked yourself, "Am I asking for too much, just to be acknowledged?" then this story is for you. Leave a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I want to know just how far this story can reach. My name is Lana. I'm 33 years old. A Mexican-American woman, living and working in Chicago, the city of skyscrapers, of speed, and of people constantly racing to prove their worth. I'm a financial manager, a job that demands precision, clarity, and absolute patience. By day, I manage millions of dollars for clients. By night, I count the wounds inside me, the ones you can't put into numbers, but that never stop aching. I'm the second daughter in an immigrant family. We weren't wealthy, but we lived by unspoken rules. My parents came to America with nothing but bare hands and the unwavering belief that sacrifice was the measure of a person's worth. What they never said out loud was this: sacrifice only mattered if it came from the child they chose. And that child wasn't me. It was Marin, my older sister. The one they always called Mom's Angel, the pride of the family. The daughter who truly knows how to love. And me? I was the quiet one, cold, emotionless. I wasn't good at showing affection. I wasn't one to cling. But I knew how to carry weight. For the past 9 years, I had been the one quietly standing in the background, paying off the mortgage when my parents nearly lost the house, covering hospital costs when my dad had a stroke, paying tuition for my niece when Marin lost her job. I didn't do those things because I was wealthy. I did them because I thought I could, because I believed that if I just tried hard enough, love would follow. But love, it turns out, was pre-assigned. No matter what I did, they still looked at me like I was the one who had distanced herself. No thank yous, no hugs, just stiff declarations like, family is a responsibility, not something to be grateful for. I used to believe that. I used to think I was rational, strong. But over time, I realized some things should not be erased, especially when they tie directly to your dignity. And from that realization, everything slowly began to change. Even though I was used to being on the outside, I couldn't give up hope. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe I just hadn't learned how to fully accept the indifference from the people whose blood I shared. When I received a text from Marin saying the whole family was organizing a big reunion that weekend and that they wanted me to help plan the event, I just sat there in silence. So long, in fact, that the coffee in my cup went cold and I didn't even notice. It had been nearly 10 years since we last had a proper gathering. Not for a holiday, not for a funeral, not out of duty, just a reunion. Over 50 family members from across the country were coming together. I could have said no. I could have used work as an excuse, or simply said, I can't make it. But somehow, inside me, there was this strange feeling. It wasn't anger, it wasn't worry. It was hope. A small and foolish kind of hope that if I gave just a little more this time, maybe something would change. I told myself, this would be the last time I tried. The last time I gave them the chance to see me not just as their financial provider, but as part of the family. And so, I made the plans. I called a high-end restaurant by the lake, the place I once dreamed of taking my parents to for a special occasion. I reserved a private VIP room, selected the menu, designed a custom printout with their names in Spanish, the language they still whispered to each other in at night. I prepared a small gift, an old family photo album, fully restored, with captions marking each milestone in our journey in America, from the first house we bought to the small grocery store they once owned. I did all of it for one reason only. In hopes they would see my effort, and for the first time in my life, I would no longer be the forgotten one. When I arrived at the venue, the atmosphere overwhelmed me for a moment. Music was playing from a little speaker in the corner, laughter and the clinking of glasses echoed like waves throughout the room. The smell of food, the faint perfumes, the familiar scent of the people I used to call uncles, aunts, and cousins, all of it made me feel like I was walking into some old dream I had forgotten long ago. I looked around, and for the first time in years, I felt my heart soften. Everyone seemed the same, but something in their eyes made me believe this time might be different. Marin was chatting enthusiastically with our aunts, Mom was fixing Dad's scarf, and Dad was laughing a laugh I thought I'd never hear again. In that moment, I felt a flicker of light inside me. Maybe this time, they'll see me. I didn't know then that this very moment, that fragile little hope, would be the thing to hurt me the most. But at the time, I didn't know. I still believed. I was standing near the service table, checking the final dessert tray, smiling as I watched Mom glowing in the red dress I had quietly bought for her a few years ago. She still didn't know it was from me. Dad was surrounded by our uncles, laughing and talking in thick, warm Spanish from the homeland. I started walking over, about to say something, when Marin suddenly stepped up to the center of the room with a microphone in hand, smiling brightly. All eyes turned to her. "I just want to take a moment to do this," Marin said, then turned toward our parents with shimmering eyes, like she was filming an emotional tribute for social media. "Mom, Dad, this is a gift from the bottom of my heart." She then held up a large wooden frame, polished oak, displaying crisp, high-resolution photos from throughout the family's history, old pictures of Mom hugging Marin in the kitchen, Dad walking Marin to school on her first day, the whole family at a picnic in the park. The room burst into warm laughter, some even applauded. But I stood frozen. Because among those nearly 20 photos in that grand frame, not a single one included me. Not one. I swallowed hard. Suddenly, the room felt a few degrees colder. My heartbeat slowed. It was the kind of pain that feels like someone quietly stabbed you in the chest without needing a knife. I tried to stay calm, telling myself, maybe it was unintentional, maybe she just forgot. But before I could even come up with a reason to forgive, my mother stood up. She raised her wine glass high, and with a proud smile, she said loudly, This is the daughter who has always loved and stood by us." She turned and pointed directly at Marin. "This girl is the one who truly takes care of her parents. Always thinks of the family." And then, like a blade of ice, she ended with a sentence I will never forget. "The other one has never lifted a finger to help." I know. The room fell so silent I could hear the wine glass touch the porcelain plate. Some people turned to look at me. Some looked down, some let out quiet sighs. I stood there, beneath the dim glow of the chandelier, like a stranger who had accidentally walked into someone else's celebration. Every word my mother spoke dug deeper into my chest, crushing all the silent efforts I had poured into this family. The nights spent staying up late trying to cover hospital bills. The months of quietly wiring money for rent. The years of working myself to the bone just to make sure no one in the family lost their insurance, all of it, erased in a single sentence. I didn't cry, I didn't react. I simply nodded, gently placed my purse on my shoulder, and walked toward the exit. Someone called my name softly behind me, but I didn't turn around. I walked through the hallway lined with red carpet, past the restaurant's main doors, and stepped outside where the night wind howled, sharp and cold against my skin, as if to remind me that summer had long since passed. I opened the car door, got in, closed it slowly, took a deep breath, and whispered just one thing. "That's enough." Then I started the car and drove away carrying a piece of my heart that would never be whole again. I drove through the night. The city faded behind me, streetlights blurring in the rearview mirror like memories being torn apart. The road home felt longer than usual, not because of traffic, but because of the weight of every thought crashing through my mind like waves pounding on an already bruised chest. I didn't play music. I didn't call anyone. Just the sound of tires rolling on the pavement and my own breathing heavy, uneven, like I was clinging to the last bit of calm I had left. I searched my memory, trying to find even one moment, just one, when I was truly seen. But there was nothing. What had I done in the past 9 years? I was the one who took out a mortgage loan under my name to save our house when my parents first went bankrupt. I was the one who quietly paid that loan month after month, never once complaining even when it meant nearly missing my own rent. I was the one who linked all their credit cards to my bank account, setting up automatic payments so they'd never lose power or water. I provided nearly $150,000 to this family not because I had money to spare, but because I thought it was the only way to keep the family thread from snapping. I remembered the time Mom needed emergency surgery and her insurance wouldn't cover it. I emptied my savings, the money I'd set aside for my first home. I remembered when Marin was unemployed for almost 2 years, and I paid her daughter's tuition so her child wouldn't miss a school year. I remembered when Dad fell ill, and the one who stayed at the hospital the most was me, even though Marin always got the credit in front of the relatives. And now, after everything, I'm the daughter who never helped. One sentence. In front of 52 people. A judgment that erased everything I ever was. I didn't know which feeling was strongest, the pain, the disappointment, or the cold, sudden clarity. Maybe all of them. But one thing was certain, I couldn't and didn't want to go on like this any longer. I used to think, if I just tried a little harder, sacrificed a little more, maybe things would change. But tonight, as I sat behind the wheel, my eyes burning from fatigue, not from tears, I finally understood recognition can't be forced. Love can't be bought with bills and kindness. I wasn't angry. I was just empty. The kind of emptiness that no apology could ever fill. As the car turned down the familiar street, golden lights shining on quiet little homes, I wondered if I disappeared tomorrow, would anyone in that family truly notice? Or would they just be inconvenienced because the bills hadn't been paid? I turned off the engine and sat there for a few more minutes, staring at the steering wheel, before giving a small nod as if I had just made a decision. A decision that would change everything. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I was finally clear-headed enough to know even kindness needs limits. And I had reached mine. I walked into my small apartment, bathed in soft golden light, as if it had been waiting quietly for me to return from a war I didn't know would run this deep. I set my bag down on the chair, took off my coat, and stepped into the space that had always felt like mine, where no one questioned me, no one judged me, and no one needed me to hold everything together just to prove I belonged. There was no tightness in my chest this time, no swirl of questions stabbing at me like they had after every other hurt. Just a strange kind of silence, but this time, it wasn't scary. It was clear. It felt like a space I finally knew how to fill, not with more patience, not with more sacrifices, but with action. A silence that wasn't surrender but a beginning. A beginning of one final decision. I would no longer live like a side character in my own story. I brewed a strong black coffee, set my laptop on the kitchen counter, and got to work. No hesitation. First was the bank account. I logged into the user management panel and removed my parents' access from the account they had been using for years. That account had originally been created to help them manage finances more independently, but in reality, it became a quiet pipeline where they drew from me without ever needing to ask. Then, I canceled every automatic payment: rent, electricity, hospital bills, insurance contributions. Line by line, I hit confirm, each click feeling like I was rewriting the boundaries of my life. Next were the supplementary credit cards. I remembered issuing a card for my mom back when she had trouble paying a hospital bill. Since then, that card had become the so-called family fund, meaning every time they wanted something, they swiped. No one asked. No one thanked me. I logged in, located the cards under my mother's and Marin's names, and permanently deactivated them. Not paused, not suspended. Permanently. It was a closure that couldn't be undone. I didn't do any of this out of rage. I didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't even send a message to make a point. Every action came with a strange sense of peace, like I had finally realized something I should have known all along. Some doors don't need to be slammed shut, you just need to take the key and walk away. It wasn't selfishness. And it wasn't about the money. It was about accepting one simple truth. I am no longer part of that family. They said it themselves in front of 52 people at a party I paid for. They erased me from every photo frame, every sentence, every toast. And if they could do that in front of everyone, then I had every right to take back the silent role I'd been playing for the past 9 years. I closed the laptop, took a sip of coffee that had long gone cold, and stared out the window where the city carried on, completely unaware that a lifelong tie had just been severed. But I knew. I could feel every breath in my chest growing lighter. The weight was gone. The fear of being called ungrateful had lifted. There was only me, and for the first time in a very long while I allowed myself to stop carrying, stop saving, stop enduring just because we shared a last name. The next morning, my phone started buzzing nonstop at 6:17 a.m. I had just stepped out of the shower, hair still damp, towel draped loosely around my shoulders, when the screen lit up with missed calls: 17 from Marin, 11 from Mom, and the rest from unknown numbers I could only assume were from the hotel or relatives. I placed the phone down on the kitchen counter, poured myself a glass of water, and sat. I wasn't in a rush. I no longer felt obligated to fix everything right away. Around 6:50, the phone rang for the 39th time. It was Marin. I answered. Her voice came through instantly, no greeting, no pause. "What the hell did you do? You cut everything off, didn't you?" Mom and Dad got turned away at the hotel, the tour was cancelled, their credit card doesn't work. They're standing outside in the cold with nowhere to stay. What do you want? I stayed quiet for a few seconds. In my mind, I pictured Mom standing beside her, that furrowed brow, that confused look in her eyes. But I didn't feel guilty, I just felt at peace. I responded in a tone so calm it surprised even me. "I didn't do anything harsh, Marin. I just took back what no longer belongs to me." Marin's voice shot up, hoarse with rage. "You know they depend on you. How could you be so heartless? They have nowhere to go." I pressed my fingers lightly around the glass of cold water. My mind went back to last night, to when Mom stood in the middle of the party, raised her glass, and pointed at Marin. "This is the daughter who has always loved us." Then turned to me and said I had never helped. I inhaled once, slowly, and answered without anger, without venom, just as if I were stating a fact. "You're the one who always loved them, remember? Take care of them." There was a pause on the other end. I heard Mom's voice faintly in the background. What did she say? Marin didn't respond right away. I could imagine her face stiffening, the confusion rising in her throat. Then her voice came back, softer now. "Is this your revenge?" I shook my head, even though she couldn't see it. "No, Marin. This isn't revenge. I'm just stepping out. I've stood in that spot long enough to know that if I don't walk away, I'll keep getting stepped on." I hung up. I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't need anyone to call me back. The phone kept vibrating, but I had already silenced it. I left it on the table, turned away, and started the washing machine, the only thing in my apartment that actually needed me at that moment. I knew Mom wouldn't let this go easily. I knew Marin would come back with more blame, more tears, maybe even sharper words than before. But this time, I was no longer the daughter who would sit there trembling, waiting for the criticism to end, just to pull out my wallet again like a machine. I had made a choice. And that choice was to let them live with what they themselves had declared in front of the entire family, that I was nothing. So, this time, they would finally see what it really looks like, when I am nothing at all. And just how empty their lives feel without me. It only took 2 days. 2 days after Marin's call, I already knew what was coming next, and it came, exactly like the tired script I knew by heart: social media. Sunday morning, while I was brewing coffee, I got a message from a high school friend. "Lana, are you okay? I just saw your aunt's post." I didn't need to ask. I logged into my backup Facebook account, the one I used to quietly follow family updates without drawing attention. And right at the top of the feed, my mother's post was spreading rapidly across the Mexican community in Chicago. The photo was an old one: my parents sitting in the living room under dim yellow lighting, their faces weary and somber. The caption that followed was long and theatrical. "Some children, once successful, forget their aging parents. We never asked for much, just a warm home, a shared meal. But now, we've been abandoned. Shut out from the life of our own child. She cut off everything without a word. We have no place to stay, no money to live. We raised her with all our hearts, and in return, we get cruelty." The post quickly gained hundreds of comments. Some expressed sympathy, some were outraged. Others took screenshots and reshared it with captions like, "Filial piety is dying in today's world." I read every line not to hurt myself, but to fully understand. They had chosen to make me the villain openly, without hesitation. But this time, I didn't stay silent. I'd grown used to being distorted. I'd grown used to drowning in the role of the cold, heartless daughter that others had assigned me. And for that very reason, I was ready. I opened my laptop and went to a folder I had labeled Support History, where I had kept every bank statement, every bill, every hospital invoice, tuition payment, mortgage record, and transfer receipt. I pulled out the clearest pieces of evidence, attached the files, and wrote a post. No blame, no emotion, just facts. I opened the post with a single line. "If silence makes people believe I'm guilty, then maybe it's time I speak." I listed the support I had provided over the past 9 years. Total amount contributed, $150,724. Wushilo. Including 84 months of mortgage payments, 3 emergency surgeries, 2 years of tuition for my niece, 5 hospital bill payments, 22 utility bills, and 9 instances of debt coverage. I didn't name my parents. I didn't directly mention my mother's post. I simply stated numbers, dates, and documents, letting the truth speak for itself. The post was quickly reshared by friends, colleagues, and people who had witnessed me cancel vacations to send money home, who had seen me wipe away tears after phone calls with my family. The comments began to shift. Some wrote, "This is unbelievable." Others called me the forgotten daughter. One person reshared it with the hashtag number "The truth deserves to be heard." I didn't respond to every comment. I didn't feel vindicated. But inside, there was a peace I had never known before. As if, after years of living in the shadows of silence and pain, I finally had the chance to write my own story publicly, truthfully, and without fear of being twisted again. They chose social media to condemn me. I used the very same platform to reclaim justice for myself. No bitterness, no accusations. Just the truth, and for the first time in my life, the truth stood with me. 3 days after my post went viral, on a gloomy Wednesday afternoon when the skies over Chicago were blanketed in gray and the rain had been falling nonstop, the doorbell to my apartment rang. I looked through the peephole, and I wasn't surprised to see 3 familiar faces standing outside. My mother, my father, and Marin. All 3 wore dark coats, their faces heavy and tired. Marin kept her head down. My mother looked straight ahead. My father avoided eye contact. I opened the door. No greeting. I simply stepped aside to let them in. The air in the apartment grew heavier, as if they'd carried in years of unspoken weight. My mother was the first to speak. She sat on the couch, hands clasped together, her eyes trying to stay steady, though her voice trembled. "We need to talk." I sat across from them, holding a mug of hot tea. I didn't appear defensive, nor did I rush to push them out. Marin glanced at me, her eyes red, though I couldn't tell if it was guilt or simply embarrassment from being exposed. My father still hadn't said a word. He gave a quiet cough and stared out the window, like he wished he weren't part of the conversation. My mother began with a familiar line. I didn't know things would go this far. Then she said she didn't mean to hurt me. That the words she said that night came from emotion, from losing control. That the Facebook post was just a way to release tension. That she didn't think I'd be so deeply hurt. Marin chimed in, saying, "You have every right to be upset, but didn't you go a little too far too?" I sat quietly as they spoke. I didn't react, I didn't show emotion. I waited. Waited until they stopped, not because they'd run out of things to say, but because they were beginning to realize my silence was more unsettling than any accusation. I set the cup down on the table and spoke, gently but firmly. "I'm not angry." My mother looked up, a flicker of hope flashing across her eyes, as if everything could be forgiven with those 3 words. But I continued. "I'm not angry because I've finally stopped expecting anything." I looked directly at her, each word slow and clear. "But when you stood in front of 52 people and said I never helped, you didn't just humiliate me. You erased my entire life. Every night I stayed up figuring out how to send money. Every month I stretched myself thin to keep the house. Every little hope that maybe if I just gave a little more, I'd be seen. You crushed it all in one sentence." My mother tried to speak, but I raised my hand gently to signal I wasn't finished. "I don't need an apology. I don't need explanations. Because you chose to do it publicly, so I'm choosing to end it publicly. Not out of bitterness, but because I've had enough. This is—" I turned to Marin. "You said I went too far? Did you not think that party was too far? I'm not seeking revenge, I'm just stopping exactly where I should have stopped a long time ago." My father finally spoke, his voice low and raspy. "We're family, Lana, no matter what." I cued in, still calm, still composed. Family isn't a place where one person has to constantly bleed just so everyone else can feel comfortable. I've lived like that for nearly 10 years. Now, I choose something else. I cruise. No one said anything else. There were no tears, no yelling. Just 3 people sitting on a couch, facing the daughter they had once treated like a shadow. And now, that shadow had found its voice and they didn't know how to move forward without it. When they stood to leave, my mother turned back, eyes searching for some sign I might ask them to stay. But I only said softly, "I'm no longer angry, I'm just no longer staying." Then I closed the door, not forcefully, not in haste. But this time, it was to truly close a chapter in my life. A year has passed since I shut that door behind me after that final conversation. Time hasn't erased anything, but it has made everything clearer. What once felt like an open wound now rests as a faint scar on my chest, no longer painful, just a quiet reminder that I once walked through fire. News about my family still finds its way to me through friends, old acquaintances, or the occasional post I stumble upon on social media. I don't go looking. But somehow, truth always finds us when we're still enough to hear it. I heard Marin moved out of our parents' home. Apparently, after a loud argument when Mom asked her to help financially with the house, she said plainly, "I can't carry things the way she did." That sentence, though it came late, echoed in me like a rare kind of acknowledgement. Not one that needed my forgiveness, but one that helped me understand. Eventually, everyone is forced to face the truth, no matter how long they try to avoid it. My parents, after struggling to keep up with living expenses, had to sell the old house, the one I spent years trying to save. They moved into a worn-down apartment tucked deep in a working-class neighborhood, where no one called them the model family anymore. And me? I live in a small apartment in Chicago where morning sunlight pours through square windows, where I care for a white orchid I keep on the sill, where no one raises a glass for me, but no one whispers behind my back or erases me, either. Peace didn't arrive with fireworks or validation from others. It came when I no longer needed any of that to feel like I mattered. I still go to work every day. Still buy my coffee at the little cafe on the corner. Still help the people I choose to help, but now, out of choice, not from the invisible burden called family obligation. Sometimes, on late nights, I sit alone on my balcony, looking out at the city lights and thinking about that night, the party. There's no bitterness anymore, no regret. Only tenderness for the woman I once was, who tried so hard she nearly lost herself, just for a word of recognition that never came. I've come to understand that there are glasses of wine that will never be raised in our name. Thank yous that will never be spoken. But that doesn't mean we're unworthy. In fact, it's only when we dare to let go of those things that we reclaim our dignity. I once gave quietly. And now, I've won quietly. No applause, no spotlight. Just a heart that feels light, like a glass that was never lifted, but no longer leaves me waiting. Because in the end, I chose myself. And for the first time, I truly began to live. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever sacrificed everything, only to be met with silence, if you've ever wondered, am I asking too much just to be seen? Then this story is for you. Not to reopen the wound, but to remind you. You are not alone, and you are not wrong for setting boundaries. Some relationships only become truly clear. Stop proving your worth through someone else's gratitude. Because sometimes, stepping out of a circle of pain isn't betrayal, it's growth, it's self-rescue. It's a message to yourself. You too deserve love without having to trade your entire life for it. If you saw yourself in this story, leave a comment below, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you want to walk with us through more stories of healing like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because sometimes just one story is enough to help someone feel seen. And that's why we're here.